Hey guys, my name is David and I will be your Linode developer advocate for this video. In fact, this video is part of a series that I've partnered up with Linode to create. In this video, we're going to take a look at a home inventory management system called Homebox. So just to quickly introduce Homebox, we'll jump over to their documentation page here, and it says Homebox is the inventory and organization system built for the home user with a focus on simplicity and ease of use. And I absolutely 100% agree with those statements. There are other great solutions out there like Proxy or Snipe It that are great for inventory purposes, but they're a lot to learn. There's a huge learning curve in that sort of thing. Homebox is kind of the antithesis of that. They make it very, very simple to use and manage, and that's what we want to take a look at in today's video. And if you'd like to follow along with this tutorial, there's a couple of things that I'd like to bring up. The first is be sure to head down to the link the description of this video to find a link that will take you over to Linode to get $100 in free credit for 60 days. So as I mentioned, this is part of a video series, and I don't think it's necessary for you to go back and watch every video in this series, of course, unless you want to. I would highly encourage you to go back and watch at least the first video to kind of figure out where we started and kind of how we got to where we are right now. That's definitely going to help some things later in this video make some sense. So with all of that out of the way, let's take a look at the demonstration that Homebox has set up so we can kind of get an idea of what we're getting ourselves into here. So right here on the Homebox homepage, if you want to call it that, I guess, right there, there's a demo. And if we click that, it's actually going to bring us over to this other window where I've already logged in with the credentials that they provide on that login page. And here we can see this is the login page or the home page of Homebox here. And we can see we've got home, items, or log out. If we click on items right there, here's everything that they've got in their demo server. And of course, if we click home, that's going to take us back to where we were. And if we click log out, that's going to do exactly what we want it to do there. So up here at the top, we can see welcome back demo. Of course, that's the user that we logged in with. And below that, we've got the option to import a CSV file. So something to keep in mind with that is if you had a CSV file, you would want to make sure that the headers of that file match up to what Homebox needs in order to appropriately import the stuff, the different items in your list there. Over here, we've got a profile button that we can click on, and we can take a look at our user account, our name, our email address, password. We can change our password. We can generate an invite link if we wanted other people to be part of our setup here. We've got group settings down here for currency format. And then, of course, we can update all of this as we go along through each of these different steps. Below that, we do have some theme settings, garden light, cupcake, retro, black, business, coffee, winter, lots and lots of different options here to choose from. And of course, once you're done with that, it will automatically just change colors and you'll be good to go. And then at the bottom, there's a button there that says delete account, so that you could, of course, do exactly that, just delete your account for whatever reason you might want to do that. So if we scroll back to the top of the page and click on the items button, here we can see that we've got an admin account, we've got bacteria, we've got blender, dust. Let's look at dust. Here we can see that it's located conveniently in the attic with a general tag here. We can show empty or not show empty stuff down here at the bottom as far as some of the additional fields that we'll take a look at in a moment. We can edit or delete this item. And we've got description, quantity, serial number, model number, manufacturer, insured, and notes as kind of the primary fields for each individual item. And below that, we can upload attachments. So let's say we had a product that we wanted a picture of. Maybe you're setting this up for insurance purposes, which I think is why this is a great fit for hosting offsite from a home server. Is in case you don't have offsite backups, having this offsite is a really great option, in my opinion. We've got purchase details, purchase from, purchase price, purchase date, warranty information, and who you may have sold it to. And if we scroll up, of course, we can click edit, and we can actually edit any of this stuff that's in here. So very, very simple to manage. Again, if we come to the home page, we can, of course, we've got a ton of different locations here. I believe the first, like the initial install of this application gives us just a few locations, but of course, as they have shown here, you can add lots and lots of additional locations for your setup because not everybody has the same layout or same setup in their home or small business or wherever they happen to be. And then below that, we've got labels, which is great for categorization of different items. Maybe you've got video games, but you've got video games in different rooms. You want to click video games and figure out where they all are. That's a great way to categorize things like that with tags. And that's it. That's really how simple this is. And it's one of the reasons that I really, really love it. Again, there are plenty of other options out there for inventory management and things like that. But again, a lot of those have a huge learning curve. And this is very, very basic, very easy to set up. And that's really why I love it. So with that said, now that we've taken a look at kind of what this looks like, let's actually go ahead and get Homebox installed over on Linode. So here we are logged into our Linode account, and right here you can see our Linode tutorial that I created way back when I first started this video series. And basically what we want to do, just to keep things simple, is actually deploy Homebox using Portainer. Again, we covered Portainer and Nginx Proxy Manager and all of those setup processes in that first video. Again, that's why I recommend going and checking out that video if you haven't already, if you're not familiar with Linode, Nginx Proxy Manager, Portainer, some of the things that we're talking about in the rest of this video. But what we want to do is grab our IP address right here. I'm going to go ahead and open it in a new tab, and I'm going to add port 9000 to it. That's how we're going to get to Portainer. So I'm going to go ahead and get logged in to my Portainer account here. And once we're set up and ready to go, we can just go ahead and depending on where you happen to land here, you may have to click on local, but because we're good, we can actually just click on stacks right here. And you can think of stacks like Docker Compose files. Those names are kind of interchangeable when we're dealing with Docker Compose and Portainer. So just kind of think of those as basically the same thing. What I want to do is grab something from my other window. I'm going to click on add a stack. Again, this is the same as adding a Docker Compose. And what I want to do is call this Homebox, like so, and we're just going to paste this in, and we're going to talk about what I just pasted in here. Now, if you're not sure where I got this stuff that I pasted in, if we come back over to here, we can go to Quick Start, and right here is our Docker Run or our Docker Compose. And there are additional configuration elements, environment variables that you can add to your Docker Compose to add some functionality up to and including, an SMTP server for sending and receiving notifications from the server or from your Homebox instance here. We're not going to do that, but if you wanted to, you would need to submit a support ticket to Linode in order to have them open up an SMTP port on your setup. For security reasons, they have that turned off by default. So you would just need to submit a ticket to get port 25 opened up, or 587, whichever SMTP port you need. Contact them and have them open that up for you. Very, very straightforward and easy to do. So let's jump back over to our Portainer so we can take a look at what I've changed or what I've done here with this Docker Compose, this stack. So we've got a version 3.4. Versions are just always at the top of these, so we know what kind of functionality each Docker Compose read stack will have the capability to have. Below that, we've got our services. Services kind of the next line always. And under here, we've got Homebox. Here we've got an image, basically which Docker image are we going to use? And it's going to be this HeyCot Homebox. We're going to use the latest tag to make sure that we're getting the most current version when we download this. We're going to have a container name of Homebox, a restart policy of always. Basically, if your server reboots or whatever the case is, this container will automatically try to come back up. If you have this restart policy always here, you can adjust that to never or unless stopped, or there's different options that you can use. But in this case, I think always is perfectly acceptable here. Below this, we've got some environment variables that I need to change here. Just a second. There we go. And so we've got some log levels and some log formats. So basically, what kind of logging information do you want in case something goes wrong and you're trying to troubleshoot things? Having logs enabled like this is super helpful to understand what's going on. And of course, that log format in this case will be a text file. We've got a max upload size, so that's uploading attachments and images, PDFs, things like that. By default, this is set to 10 megs. If you need to adjust that, have that. You can change it right there very, very easily. Below this, we've got volumes, basically where on the server do you want to store your data? And of course, if you've watched other videos in this series, you'll know that I go to home, Docker, and then the application name, just so I've got kind of a consistent thing, so I know where everything is stored just for future reference, that sort of thing for me. And then, of course, the left side over here, that is where is it on the physical server or the VPS, whatever you want to call it. But over here on the right side, we've got what folder is that information mapped to inside the Docker container. So we're going to do that in the /data. You can modify the left half of that colon, the home Docker Homebox. You can put that wherever is most convenient for you, but do not change anything on the right side of that colon. That's mapped specifically for this Docker container. Below that, that, we've got some ports. They've got this at 3100 on the physical. Let's call it the physical server side, and then port 7745 on the container side. Again, you can change everything on the left side there. Don't change the right side. And then we're going to actually attach this to our Nginx Proxy Manager network for easier configuration of domain names and SSLs. So we're putting it on the network that we created in that first video, this Nginx Proxy Manager _default. And then because we've declared it here, we actually need to give it some more information below that we see where we're declaring this network, and we're saying, here's the network we're declaring, and this external equals true lets it know that this is a network that already exists on the server. If you were deploying this for the first time, you might change that true to false. But because that network already exists, we can just leave that as true. And then once all of this is good to go, once we're happy with how all of this looks, all we've got to do is scroll down and click on deploy the stack. We're going to give this a moment to do what it needs to do. And then as long as we don't get any error messages, the screen will refresh just like it did there. And then we can scroll down and find Homebox right here. And here it says it is running. So let's take a look at the logs. And it said it registered all of these routes, so we're stoked about that. And then down here at the bottom, it says starting HTTP server on port 7745. Again, that's the container port that it uses. So what we want to do next is come back a page and come over here and click right there. So here we are. It's just that easy to get set up. Of course, it's not terribly convenient to have this set up on an IP address and a port. So what we want to do next is start looking at getting a domain name set up and getting Nginx Proxy Manager set up or configured to work with an SSL for the domain name that we're going to set up, as well as getting it set up for security purposes and that sort of thing, so that we're not doing it on this IP address and port. So let's jump back over to Linode at this point. We're going to come over here to where it says domains. And I know from having done this a few different times, I'm using this tutorial server.xyz. Again, if you're not familiar with how to get a domain name set up in Linode, be sure to, again, to refer to that first video where we did exactly that. So what I want to do is open this up. And what I want to do is come down to where it says A/AAAA record. And I want to add an A record here. So I'm going to click the blue button right there. And up here, I'm going to I'm going to call this Homebox. And then we're going to put in the IP address of our Linode here, which will be 45.79.14.131. Of course, yours will be different. You don't have the same IP address I do. So once we've got this set up and ready to go, we can click on Save. And here we can see that it added it right here to this A record list. So then we can come over and just grab this IP address and paste on port 81 and get logged in. And this is going to be Nginx Proxy Manager, where we're going to manage the domain on our Linode, as well as generate an SSL for the domain itself. So we're going to get logged in using whatever username and password you used when you set this up for yourself. So once we're logged in, what we want to do first is actually come over here to where it says SSL certificates. We want to generate an SSL certificate first. It simplifies things later on. So we're going to click SSL. We're going to come up here to the top right where it says add SSL certificate. And we're going to click Let's Encrypt right there. We're going to then type in the subdomain and the domain that we just created over on Linode. So we're going to go to Homebox, like so, and hit enter. And then we want to make sure that that domain name, that subdomain in this case, is actually reachable by clicking the test server reachability button right here. Okay, this happens sometimes, and it's fine. It's one of those things that happens. So what you may have to do is just give it a few minutes for the new DNS settings that we just implemented over on Linode to kind of propagate and take effect, so that Nginx Proxy Manager can recognize this subdomain setup that we just created. And literally, I closed that window, retested, and now we're good to go. Now we're seeing this green message saying your server is reachable, and creating an SSL certificate should be possible. So we're going to go ahead and click on Close. And we're going to accept the terms. Be sure to read those terms and make sure that you agree with them. Put in your email address should already be there. And then we can click Save. We'll give this just a couple of minutes to generate that certificate and store it where it needs to be stored. Oops. See, and again, this happens sometimes. So we just click Save again. And more often than not, it will just work at that point. Again, DNS is one of those finicky things that sometimes takes a few minutes to take effect depending on your setup. And again, I just click Save, and here we are. It worked just fine, so we know we're good to go now. So our next step will be come over here to the top where it says Hosts. We're going to click on Proxy Host. And then we're going to create a proxy host by clicking Add Proxy Host right here. We're going to type in the subdomain and domain just like we did to generate that SSL, like so, and click enter. Now over here, we've talked about this in other videos, but if this is your first time doing this, you may not know. The scheme here, in this case, you can see that it is HTTP or HTTPS. Now our brain says this is going to be on an SSL, so we want it to be HTTPS, and that is not the case. There are exceptions, and I'll explain. So basically, if your Docker container has an SSL built into it, you would switch this to HTTPS. However, Homebox does not. In fact, honestly, most Docker containers do not have an SSL built into them. So that being the case, we're actually going to leave this as HTTP. And it's just that that's all we've got to do there. Now, for the forward host name /IP, what we want to do is actually jump back over to Portainer and find the IP address of the container on the Docker network that we have attached it to. So we're going to come back to here. And in fact, this is perfect. I'm glad we're right here. Right here is the IP address that we're looking for. This is the IP address of this container on that Nginx proxy manager _ default network that we attached it to. So we're just going to copy this 172.18.0.4. We're going to come back to Nginx proxy manager and paste that in there. Make sure there's no additional spaces at the beginning or the end. Sometimes those get copied. And then for the forward port, what we want to do is actually come back over. And we're going to, in this case, because we've got this on a private Docker network, we're going to use the container side. Again, that's the right side of the colon there, where we've got this 7745. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy that. We're going to jump back over to here, and I'm just going to paste that in just like so. Now we can cache our assets and block common exploits. I think those are great settings to have. We can also enable WebSocket support if we want to. And then over here for the SSL, what we can do is click right here and then go find the SSL that we just generated, where it's homebox.tutorialserver.com, but XYZ. And we're just going to check all of these boxes to make sure that there's no way somebody can try to bypass the SSL and access this on HTTP://. We want to always enforce that S in HTTPS to make sure that we've got that security enabled and that SSL in place. So once we've got that, we can click save. And then we can scroll down and find our homebox.tutorialserver.xyz. Click that. And just like that, now we have our Homebox instance set up and ready to go on a domain name. So now that we're here on our login page, the next thing we want to do is actually click register an account. We're going to go ahead and enter our information here. And then we can click on register and get logged into the account we just created. So here we are logged into our account for the first time here. And like I said, we've got just some basic storage locations of attic, bedroom, basement, garage, living room, office, kitchen, bathroom. If we want to, we can come up to the top where it says create. And then we've got the option for item/asset, location, or label. If we wanted to create a new location called studio, and click create, we can do that. Of course, we can add a description if we wanted to. And right there, our studio is now listed just that quickly. We can come in here. Oops, we can go back to home. We can click items. And then location, we'll select our new studio location. We'll call it camera, and then Lumix, and then electronics, just like so. We can click on create. You don't have to add a label to this if you don't want to. It's just for categorization purposes, like I mentioned earlier. Having those labels in there does make things a lot easier. And here we can see that we've got an item listed under studio now. If we click on electronics here, we can see that we've got our Lumix camera. We can click on edit here. Oops, not there. I lied. We can click here, and then we can click on edit, and then we can again add all of this different information. We can do simple view or expanded view, again, where we can add attachments. We can add custom fields. That's actually something new since I started looking at this a while back. Serial numbers, model numbers, manufacturers, all kinds of great information in here to be able to keep track of items around your house. Again, my biggest thing for this would be like for insurance purposes, for renter's insurance or homeowner's insurance, something like that. I feel like this is such a great tool to have. And then just up here at the top, again, earlier we had talked about items and doing an import right here using a CSV file. If we jump over to their website and we go to the importing data, we can actually see the columns that are needed in order to make that work and all of the different types, descriptions, things like that, so that we can build a CSV appropriately for the import. So That's Homebox. That's how easy it is to get Homebox set up and ready to go so that you can keep tabs of certain items, all your items, whatever you want to do as far as inventory is concerned. But I think I want to wrap this video up. I think we've been here long enough. I do want to thank you for spending a few minutes of your time with me today. And again, if you'd like to follow along, be sure to check out the first video in this series as a bare minimum and head down to the description where you'll find a link to check out Linode free of charge for 60 days and still get $100 in free credit to do it. So again, thank you for your time, and I will talk to you in the next video.